welcome to Where Passion and Purpose Collide. I'm Rebecca Monet. I, along with my co-founder, Elizabeth Denevan, are the founder of the Coterie for Women, and we're the publishers of the Franchise Woman magazine. Today, we have Tracy Cowa with us, who is stepping into big shoes because Elizabeth is in the process of moving. So thanks, Tracy, for being here
Thank you.
with us. I'm going to introduce our incredible guest, and then I want to learn everything about you, Michael. So Michael Kithcart is a certified high performance coach who moves leaders and high achievers from stuck to unstoppable using her Win Your Way framework. She's a champion in your corner and a butt kicker when it comes to helping people get out of their own way to reach new levels of excellence and fulfillment. She's also a speaker and the host of the Champions of Risk podcast. Michael coaches business leaders and entrepreneurs on next level leadership effectiveness, attracting and developing high performance teams, avoiding burnout of self and team, and elevating all voices. Super achievers and game changers work with Michael to get out of a funk so they can become re-energized and refocused. She helps them break through the sense of being stuck and quickly get to discovery, decision, and action. Michael's philosophy is working on the whole human because in order to make an outward advance, inward development has to occur. So, welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for that great introduction. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're thrilled to have you. We got to snag you at least for a few minutes.
Yeah, very impressive. Very impressive background. So tell us a little bit about what you were doing earlier on in your career.
Well, I would say that all roads started with me selling books door to door in college because I had this experience. I did it out of spite, and it was 100% commission in an area that you didn't know. They purposely moved you out. But what I learned from that is I got a week of training, and they would always like tell you these different books to read, like Og Mandino and Zig Ziglar. So I feel like my whole personal development journey started at the age of 18, selling books door to door. And that's carried through in everything else that I've done in my career.
Wow. I love how they pushed you out of your comfort zone, which is something that, we at Oracle Profiles focus on a lot. I love that.
It definitely puts you out of your comfort zone. It tests you in many, many ways.
Yeah.
So you think that's what really carried you partly throughout your career?
I do, because then after college, I went into a 100% commission sales position in media sales. And so it just seemed really normal and logical. I had started out on the other side on air and working in newspaper before, but there was something about that sales piece where, because I was able to actually influence businesses, like their success, right? I was working with business owners or marketing directors, and it was really like I could help them grow their business. And I really loved that. So that would be like the second piece that has really stuck with me on that. And then just getting into that continuous improvement in sales, right? It's just like you're measured on what you're bringing in. And so you really are analyzing what's working, what's not, what works with this type of person. And I wasn't fully aware of that early on, but in hindsight, I can see that was really that foundational piece that has carried through, and part of what really made me want to become an executive coach.
What an interesting combination. I mean, first off, this being introduced to personal growth and that kind of things. And then honestly, having to kind of apply it in real life to make a living, because there's, sales, especially 100% commission sales. If you're not on your top of your game, you got some problems. So, and oftentimes, at least my perspective is a lack of success, especially in sales, is more an inner job than an outer job. It's not so much skills and technique and presentation. It's Would you agree with that? That it's more of an inner thing that allows us to be successful in sales, or for that matter, in any business?
Absolutely. I really do, because we can all go through the same sales training, right? And there's definitely that skill development that's needed along the way in anything, that in any profession. And then outside of that, what is that makes the difference, that has some people continue to excel while others stay stagnant or never really get it, right? And then they just opt out. And so now all of those differences are the internal pieces, how we're talking to ourselves, the belief that we have in ourselves, our willingness to persist in and continue even when we can't fully see the efforts of our progress yet. That's all about that inner development.
So true.
You know, what's interesting about sales to me is that a lot of times when we think about sales, we're thinking about outward competition and achieving numbers, maybe against others. But there's also that delicious element of competing against ourselves, going back to the continual improvement that you, Michael, were talking about a little bit earlier.
Yes, that is so true. And for some people do, and those who are familiar with StrengthsFinder, right? There's a difference between competition and achiever, and that competition strength is about comparing self to others and outward benchmarks. An achiever is that internal drive, always competing against self. And that is a preferred method. I would say, like they're both strengths, but outside of that, how can you get 1% better every day? How can you, have an expectation of self that you're gonna, land that deal in a better way, or you're gonna try a different approach. And all of this leads to entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. I had no idea when I was 22 years old that, I was going to have my own business and be an entrepreneur. But again, when you look back on it, it's just like super similar. There's just so much compatibility around that.
Yeah, it is funny because most of our journeys aren't direct. We don't decide at 15, we're going to be an entrepreneur. We're going to build, a mega empire of some sort. We're going to invent something. I mean, there's a few of us that do that, but in general, it is kind of this duck and weave process that ultimately gets us to being entrepreneurs, including what you were talking about, this pushing yourself outside the comfort zone, the sales, the helping other businesses through effective marketing grow their businesses, which I'm sure created all kinds of curiosity. Not only was it fulfilling to be part of helping someone else grow their business, yeah. But you had to have learned a ton of stuff en route, right? That the running a business isn't just marketing, it's a whole bunch of other things. So I'm assuming you learned a lot vicariously and by observing these other businesses that you were helping from a marketing perspective.
Yes, that's so true, Rebecca, because really, when you built a strong relationship with a client who was entrusting you to help them build their business, yes, on some level, it was about making more sales, but on other levels, we were helping them hire and recruit when their businesses were growing and they needed people to come and work. We would help them with social causes. So things that they believed in strongly, how did we match them up and help them with their favorite nonprofit organizations? And so, yeah, it really felt like you were learning the business, and you got to know, a lot of the different people in their businesses as well. So yeah, it was just such a great, foundational piece for me. And I'm like, anybody who's in media sales, I just have like this little warm space in my heart. And I moved on to leadership in sales in media as well. And so that theme first and foremost of like, I love helping grow businesses. It's like, I love helping people grow. At first, it was like, I learned that too, and I got a piece of it, and I noticed how much of a difference it made for me. So coaching really lets me do both. I do help people reach their highest potential, and I help them grow their businesses. So it's like, I just like have
Best of
this
all
great
worlds,
life.
right? As the best of all worlds. So, would you call this a passion, a purpose that you now have?
I do. I do. And I feel like I always had it. Like I always had this passion for people and their stories. Like, how did they overcome adversity and how did they become the best at what they did? And I started that out earlier in college as a journalist. So I wanted to tell other people's stories. And, you know, then in the land of podcasting, now I get to do that in different ways with the Champions of Risk podcast. But there was that interest there. And then I started realizing that I could help people get there, that I could actually help influence and give them tools and resources and increase their self-awareness. And those were things that were going to propel them forward and do the things that they were passionate about. And that was a really great discovery. So yeah, I think it's kind of hard not to be passionate about that.
She sounds like.
I mean, Tracy, don't you agree? I mean,
I was going to say, you sound like Tracy.
Sitting here like a sponge, soaking it all up because in high school, I was in charge of journalism for the teacher biographies. So if you take that through to my, earlier years in entrepreneurship, my background in marketing, and then now as a coach, and that love, like you're talking about, that love of talent development and human resources, really that marketing, human resources, branding, right? That branding triangle, that really speaks to like still being this biographer and loving to document other people's lives and celebrate other, when my son was born, my son Michael, when my son was born, I documented pretty much every second of his life, all the way up to, let's say, 12 years old. But it was that drive, that passion for documenting, being a biographer, branding people, and really cultivating skills and talents.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it.
Do get it.
Beautiful.
And telling the story, I hadn't thought of it as a story. And every entrepreneur is a brand, as you pointed out, but much of what they are doing is telling their story about who they are and what they have to. So it is also a story. So if we can get to the core of that story and tell it in beautiful ways, or help them tell it, or help them get out of their own way, which a lot of times is the problem, so they can tell it effectively. Who doesn't want to hear, a story filled with passion and a story filled with purpose? And that's different for you, and it's different for me, and it's different for each of those entrepreneurs that you are coaching and you are mentoring and you are guiding. So I can see where there's a little purpose here.
Yes, the interesting piece too about Rebecca, so now we're talking about stories, and it's like I help entrepreneurs also break through the limiting stories that they tell about themselves, of why something can or can't happen, or what they're not good at, and therefore that's what's impacting the business and things like that. So it's all about stories, and then when you get to the financial pieces and people who like get so, fraught about money and the resistance around a plan. And it's just like, numbers are just a story. That's all they are. They feed you the information. It's in story form. And once I tell people that have a lot of resistance around making a business plan or following it, it's like you can see their like shoulders come down from their ears.
Well,
So I think
my brain is blown. My brain is blown because I'm thinking, if everything is story, even fictional stories that we tell ourselves, and the story is ever evolving, meaning we're continuing, then we can write a new chapter and do things differently. We can take a work of fiction and we can rewrite it into something that is more, whatever, fun, adventurous, romantic, whatever we want to turn that story into as business owners. But I had
Yes.
never thought, I mean, literally, it was like a mind blowing thought that the two of you just brought to my attention, that it really is all about stories.
And isn't that really why we reinvent ourselves at certain points, at certain junctures in our lives? Right? Because we're reinventing or we're pivoting the story.
Yes.
Truly.
Yes. It's very true. I took some other paths in my life. So I went through this whole sales period, and at the age of 29, I told my employer, in 1 year, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to move to Paris. And here's all the goals I'm going to hit for the next year, right? And they're just like, okay, yeah, sure. And so anyway, fast forward, I did. And because I wanted to learn about the world, because I didn't feel like, I was just this American that I hadn't traveled much out of the country, and I needed to go see the world and understand it. And that's why I got my master's in international relations. And that led me to wanting to, think that I wanted to be an ambassador. Like I needed to go work for the State Department and do this. And I was very passionate about the world. I wasn't passionate about enforcing US beliefs onto other countries. But I didn't get that until I went all the way through and took the Foreign Service exam and passed the first round, the written, and then went to DC and, in front of all kinds of foreign service officers, failed miserably. I mean, like, bombed. Like to the point, like by the end of the day, it became comical. And they couldn't call my name fast enough to tell me that I had not passed.
Out of here.
Wow.
Which should be another point of like why I'm made to be an entrepreneur and a business owner. It's like, I am not a yes person. But I was so, passionate about global perspective and women's empowerment. And so I found other ways to work with women's empowerment groups in developing countries and stuff. But sometimes the passion that you think you have is not always accurate. And so I pivoted and went back into what, I knew.
It's interesting because I think you're right, especially those of us that are intellectually curious, and it sounds like you are definitely in that category. It's easy to have many passions.
Yes.
But is that a passion we should be chasing versus just entertaining and dabbling our feet? I mean, traveling to Paris is one thing. Trying to change a Parisian's viewpoint on the world is another thing, right? So, and understanding culture and the food and, that's one thing, right? That to express that passion that way. But I guess the question I would have around that, or I would ponder anyway, is how would you know, or how do we know when we should dive in to a passion rather than just dabble and say, okay, I'm interested in skiing. I have a passion for skiing, but I'm not going to be a ski instructor, and I'm not going to buy a mountaintop and start a ski lodge, right? So
Yeah.
when do you know what you should chase and what you shouldn't?
Okay, I'll start, and then Tracy, I know Tracy's going to have more to add to this. So I would say you're never going to know until you start. So just start and explore and try things out. And it's more than likely never going to look the way that you thought it was going to initially, and that's okay. One lesson that I learned is that just because you can be interested in even passionate about something, it doesn't need to be your job. It doesn't need to be the thing that you do full time. You can fulfill that passion in lots of different areas. And so maybe somebody's listening, and that might take a little bit of pressure off of them, because we're never going to have it figured out. Just start and adapt. Tracy, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I love everything that you just said. I would add to that the fact that sometimes we're just pulled towards something and we don't exactly know why. So I think that goes hand in hand with your, jumping right in, diving in. Now, we don't always stop and rationalize it, but there are certain jobs that weigh heavy on us. And when we feel that heaviness, we need to listen to our bodies and our subconscious, because sometimes that information is stored in our bodies and in our subconscious. And other times we're pulled or we're called towards something. And there's no denying when something is attracting you and there's something there to explore. Now, having said that, I would love to add the additional side of it, which I think, Michael, you will totally agree, is that some people have a hobby, like you were saying, but they may not have the business skills to go hand in hand with that hobby. So really, it's about then cultivating those business skills so that if they truly want to, they can turn their hobby into a business. Would you say?
Yes, absolutely. I love what you're saying too about the answers are stored within us, right? And it's just like, are we paying attention? Are we really? Because that little rumble that you have and you keep trying to squash down, it eventually is going to surface. So let it come up, see what happens.
The volcano.
Yeah, it is. Well, and that brings up a whole nother thing as you ladies are talking. If we can be attracted to something and it actually lights a fire, some passion and it could possibly be out of a void within us, right? Or something in us that is missing, that's causing us to be falsely attracted or attracted and making it more than it really should be, could be, is meant to be, or whatever. I mean, is that possible that I could be attracted to a business or to a situation, just like we would be attracted to, guys or businesses or whatever? And it really is because something inside is misaligned or missing in general, right? And so we have a false attraction, let's call it.
Yes.
Yes,
That is usually
yes,
what.
and that's her answer.
Yes. Next. No. That is where we get into values too, and really that misalignment sometimes can be with our values. People pursue things in spirit of things that they think that they should be, have to be, need to be. This is what I should be doing, therefore I'm going for it. And then that discomfort comes, or that breakdown comes, because it smacks right up against their values and their beliefs. And so it's great to be able to stop down and really get people to get clear about, why are you doing this in the first place? Because there's always options. That's the other thing. People always have choice and they always have options.
Imagine that.
Yes.
And it's so important to get really clear, like you said, on those values. And a lot of times they're hiding, they're lurking in our blind spots. They're not in our conscious mind. Quite often they're in our subconscious, but taking a good assessment, taking a good profile, right, will help us to align those and help us to understand that the decisions and choices we make, they either align with our values or they pull us away from our values. So it's so important to know what those values are.
Yeah. And business owners run into this a lot, right? I mean, there are big decisions that have to be made at critical crossroads in the growth of a business. Sometimes it's because of partnerships that, need to shift. Sometimes it's the decision in the way that they want to scale. They want to scale at a slower growth rate, and that feels contradictive because it's like, grow fast, but they would be doing that at the detriment of their own lives, their team's happiness and well-being. So really, like, recognizing when those moments are surfacing and giving space and time to really think through it and work through it, to get support, to get help from a coach, to be able to expand options, shift perspectives, be able to hold up the mirror and see things that maybe the person can't see quite yet themselves is really, really valuable. And so.
Michael, it's interesting. Years ago, I've always been an entrepreneur, but I had a friend who had a very successful photography studio in Canada, and he would spend so many hours a week every Monday with his mentor or coach. Now, we're talking back in the early 90s when this idea of coaching really didn't exist. And I remember he would just block it off on his calendar. Sometimes they would go fishing and sometimes they would just sit at the bar and have a beer, but he never missed those coaching for 30 years in business. He met with us and he attributed a lot of his success because of that. Today, however, we are finally understanding the value of coaching, right? I mean, back then it wasn't even heard of. So tell us a little bit about coaching and the different types of coaching and what kind of coaching that you do, Michael.
Okay. Well, again, Tracy, you and I can go back and forth on, on this one.
Take it away.
I think Tracy would agree on this. The number one thing about coaching is that the most important thing is to find a coach that works for you and where you are right now. So over time, you might need different types of coaches that can really be most helpful to you. There also needs to be that personality match. So for anyone considering it, I first and foremost want to blanket that, right? Because Tracy, there's business coaches, there are technical coaches too, like in very specific parts of, of business. Some businesses are EOS, so traction coaches are really effective for them to be able to bring that to life for their team. There are life coaches, there are executive coaches. And so just finding the right mix and having a couple of conversations with different types of coaches will help you discern like what is going to be the best fit for you.
Absolutely. There's one other thing, if I can backtrack for a minute, it's to touch on something that Rebecca, you said a little earlier about this man who for 30 years blocked off every Monday. I believe that there is, and I know Michael would agree with me, there's a whole element of discipline that goes with committing to a coach and sticking not only to the meetings, but to doing the homework, because that's the vehicle that's going to take you from A to Z.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Like there's constant practical application and, coaching is not therapy. I bet you have this conversation all the time. Let me help, share the differences between the two. And coaching is only as effective as the person is willing to do the work because there's change is going to happen. If you have a goal that you want to get to, if there's a gap between where you are and where it is that you want to go, that's going to require a change in thought. It's going to require a change in behavior and the actions that you are and getting yourself more aligned to behaving the way that you need to get to where you want to go. And that's not always, that can be a little bit of a rocky road sometimes, but
behaving and thinking in a way that you can get where you want to go, which kind of brings us to the next question I had for you, which this program you got called Winning Your Way. Can you tell us a little bit about that process and how it all came about?
And how to spell it.
Yeah, and how to spell it. I love the spelling.
Yes. Okay. So Winning Your Way with a Y. And there's two reasons. I'll tell you the first one right now. And that is because the why is all about you. It really is that people, we get acculturated, right? And I don't know if that's the right word, but it's just like you start to think that success looks a certain way because of what your company says, what your friends and your family say, what you've been conditioned growing up as, that influences you. And so winning your way is really about what is it that you want to accomplish? What makes it look like winning to you? Sometimes that's all about business because there's a vision here and that's the focus right now. Oftentimes it's a blend between business and life. And that, like, for me to win my way, I need to be home, I want to have dinner with my family. I want to not work all weekend. Winning for me means that, I'm making progress, but I'm also working out every day. Like, whatever that is for people, it's typically different than what's currently going on. And so winning your way takes people through redefining what winning looks like for them, and then how to close that gap between where they are and where it is that they want to go. So having those breakthroughs of those limiting beliefs that have kept them stuck in that place of thinking that I have to grind it out day in and day out in order to make the money that I want to make, in order to have the success that I want to, right? Like, blow that up. Yeah. And then also, once you get through a series of the thinking pieces, it's now like identifying what are the behaviors that I need to have in place and to be doing in order to have winning my way happen. And so there's some alteration of behavior that goes there, and building in the repetitiveness and the progress along the way, so that people are starting to see the results even as they are making their way toward winning their way, so that there's that alignment that comes with that definition. And the framework allows you first to create that game plan first time around, but then to keep making adjustments because you're evolving, you're growing, you're changing. And so after a period of time, a reassessment of those stages needs to happen so that you can be in even more alignment with what winning looks like for you at that next stage.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great program. I love the why, WYNNING. So it's about winning your way, and also it's about your why. So
Yes.
It's so fabulous. Really great concept. Truly, kudos. Fabulous.
Thank you. Thanks, Tracy.
I love it. I like this idea also that we're evolving, we're changing, we go through different stages of life, have different things that we want to accomplish. I did a kind of a why check early this year, and it really has changed my life by just simply reassessing, what do I want in life? And the number one thing that came up was fun. And I'm like, I don't have a whole lot of fun in my life. And it's amazing how by just putting it on paper and thinking about it, I am now looking through the fun filter on everything. I'm getting rid of certain things in my life. I'm streamlining certain things. It's been just amazing just getting that level of clarity. My win is I want more fun in my life. So what is unfun? Is that a word?
Yes.
What is
Let's coin
unfun?
it. Unfun.
Unfun.
Done.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, this is so exciting. So let's talk about some of the entrepreneurs you work with, Michael. And obviously, Tracy, I want you to kick in because you work with entrepreneurs every day too. What are some consistent themes that you see with those entrepreneurs? The good, the bad, the ugly. I want it all.
Yeah. So I'll start with the positives, right? Let's always start with positives on this, all about positive psychology. And really it's that passion, right? They believe in something so strongly, even above sometimes the belief that they have in themselves, it overrides. And so that just is a unique energy that not everybody possesses, but all entrepreneurs do. There's also this tireless energy toward the goal, the mission. Like entrepreneurs have this ability to work unbelievably hard, and then they learn to work smart, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
On that. I also think one of the other things that I love about entrepreneurs is their support of other entrepreneurs. And it doesn't mean that business and corporate doesn't do that, but what I see really consistently among entrepreneurs is a hand up. Like, come on, come with me. I was at that stage a year ago. This is what worked for me. A more willingness to align with one another, maybe help each other's businesses grow. And I really love that. So Tracy, what would you add on the positive side that you see consistently with entrepreneurs?
Oh my goodness, I think that you did such a good job. For me, what I see is good communication, because whether they're growing their businesses in one direction and expanding on what they have, or whether they're pivoting, good communication is always key in keeping the team informed of what's going on. That communication, which I guess goes hand in hand with the transparency of it. And I think some of the most successful teams have that going on for them. And of course, with the communication piece drilling back down to shared values, right? And knowing how to communicate to people who don't exactly have those shared values, but there's still a way to reach them. There's still a way to communicate or speak to their values. Even though you may not hold that as your number 1 or 2 value, you know this is important. So let me help get them on board with this vision by speaking to their values. So again, communication, transparency.
Yeah,
These are
love
all
that.
beautiful. I would add one, and that is entrepreneurs are risk takers. There was
Gee, I wish I would have thought of that.
Great lead in.
They'll jump in the deep end of the pool, and off they go. What about the ugly?
Okay, well, I don't know how much ugly it is, but here, just a couple of consistent themes that I see that are challenges. I'll say that is creating space for themselves to think, to get out of the chaos, and to really just have that space, because there's a more willingness for them to say, oh, even if they have it on their calendar, I'll do that later. Something else, like a client or somebody on the team needs me more. Another area that I think that entrepreneurs struggle is in delegating. As the businesses continue to scale up, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should, or or that you have to. And really loosening those reins. It's not uncommon. I mean, it's the same thing for in leadership too. It's just people aren't going to do it your way. Right. But are they meeting the objective? And let the rest go on that. And then the other piece that I think is really the challenge is a lot of times there's that toggle between working in the business and working on the business. Right. And really being deliberate and disciplined to be working on the business and letting others be in it. Agreed. What about you, Tracy?
I'd like to add a component to the delegation piece. So for me, what I see a lot is that entrepreneurs don't always know what to delegate. And let me explain why. It's because they don't always know, believe it or not, they don't always know the highest use of their time and talent. Mm-hmm. Now, just as a master trainer for Zoracle profiles, one of the tasks that I do is I help coaches understand how to understand their clients and help their clients understand themselves by way of understanding what the highest use of their time and talent is using the profile. Now, when an entrepreneur really gets that about themselves, the sky's the limit. I have literally seen revolutionary changes and dramatic growth. Like I have the chills right now. I wish you can see, like head to toe, the chills. I have seen dramatic changes in working with entrepreneurs and helping them open their eyes and all of a sudden see, oh my goodness, this is the space I should play in because this is where I get my results. I've been playing here, right? Because we always say, no, expand your horizon, expand your field. No, narrow it down to where you spend the highest use of your time and talent. And then you can let everybody else shine at their best light, right? It goes to the same, you shine at your best light and everyone else can shine at theirs. And that to me is the sweet spot. That's what I see, is that it all goes down to understanding what to delegate and what to keep for themselves.
Which is interesting because going back to what Michael said about this delegating part, it's hard. It's hard for entrepreneurs to do it. So for a coach, just to move them through that process, you have to delegate. You're not going to be able to scale. You're not going to be able to grow. You're going to burn yourself out if you don't accept the fact that you need to delegate, that it's possible others could do a better job than you. And then, like you said, Tracy, then defining very clearly what to delegate and what to keep for ourselves. It's a two-part process because as entrepreneurs, oftentimes we think we're the only ones that can do this perfectly or the way we want. So there's a certain amount of psychology in just accepting the fact that we might not be the best person to do these particular roles.
Can I add one more thing onto that, which is that when I was co-creating my first business, which is an extremely successful orthodontic practice, I'm bringing it up because when I was co-creating that business, I never released the reins fully until I found that right person who was able to do the job, not the way I did it, but better than the way I did it. And then it was easy. It was so easy to say, oh, you got this. And I would hand over the reins and I would carve out the next role and then do the same thing, train someone, or maybe even at that time, I didn't have, the assessment to tell me or the profile to tell me, the right people and the right values. So I would train people and maybe I would train 1 or 2 people or 3 people until I found that right person who then I would hand over the reins and so on and so forth, right? Trained myself all the way out of the office.
That's beautiful.
That was a joke.
Teams, it's about teams, right? And building them. Yeah, and I know that's a lot of what you do too, Michael, is to help these entrepreneurs see their talents, their skills, and to build strong teams around them. So we are running out of time, but the last question I have for you is kind of an odd question, and that has to do with how do you help your clients get past exhaustion and overwhelm? Is this delegation piece a part of that? I mean, how do you do that? Because there's no doubt working with entrepreneurs, they go, 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 and it's very easy to get exhausted and overwhelmed. So
it's so true. Yes. And everybody's feeling it right now. I'm sure both of you are having these conversations with your clients and friends and anybody in your community because people are just really feeling it. And so what I really try to do is help people understand and find ways that are going to start helping them feel more energized. That it's not just going to be a switch and then all of a sudden I'm going to wake up the next morning, one night of good sleep, and I am no longer exhausted. I am no longer overwhelmed. So I have people look in 5 areas. And if they can do something in one of these areas every day, or if they can do a little something in the 5, that really can help raise their level of energy. And the first one is clarity. I'll just say this really quick, but like if you are spinning and spinning and spinning, what's most important right now?
Yeah.
What's the consistency that you can have in a day? Like help yourself eliminate decisions. You're going to make tens of thousands of decisions over the course of the day. What's what are some consistent things that you can put in place that you just don't even have to think about anymore? Eat the same thing every day, wear the same thing every day. It doesn't matter, right? The commitment, what are you truly committed to? Because there does have to be some prioritization, but what are you committed to? And is it on the calendar? Because if it's not on the calendar, you are not committed to it. Just plain and simple. The fourth one is caring. There has to be some element of self-care. They're just like, how are you caring for self? Walk for 15 minutes, meditate, whatever. And if you can't do it for yourself, what are you going to do that's something nice for somebody else? Because you will benefit from that too. And the fifth one is celebration. You are going there. Stop down, acknowledge and recognize that progress is being made. There are small wins that are happening on the road to the big goal. And so take the time to celebrate. Don't you feel more energized already?
Boom, I love this. Okay, we could talk for hours and hours. Unfortunately, we do have to kind of wrap up. Michael, if anyone wanted to get hold of you to learn more about winning your way, to learn more about you, how would we do that?
Oh, thanks, Rebecca. Yes, you follow me on LinkedIn, please. I'm Michael W. Kithcart on LinkedIn, also Instagram. Or if you just want to like, what the heck is she about? Check out the podcast. Rebecca is going to be on next week. She will be the featured guest on the Champions of Risk podcast.
Boom. Thank you for being with us, Tracy. Thank you for stepping into some big shoes and being my co-host today. You're a doll. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. You're a pleasure.